Okay, welcome. Dov Gordon here from The Alchemist Entrepreneur, dovgordon.net, and this is a deep dive training into my tip sheet, which by now I imagine you have downloaded the PDF and printed it out and read it through. ToughNut Sales Conversation Tip Sheet. We're going to look at 4 key points to go deeper into 4 key aspects of what's included in the tip sheet so that you can really master the thinking and really hit those next sales opportunities out of the park, even if you're talking to a buyer who appears to be a tough nut to crack. So, as I said, my name is Dov Gordon from The Alchemist Entrepreneur, dovgordon.net. And if you like what I'm sharing with you and you find it helpful, and if you're looking for a consistent flow of ideal clients, feel free to reach out to me, Dov Gordon at dovgordon.net. That is my specialty. Point number 1 that I want to emphasize is when you're in a sales conversation with somebody, you want that the conversation is all about this person coming to you saying, I have this problem, can you help? I want this result, can you help? But what if in a rather common situation like the one with Daniel and Amy in the tip sheet here, what about if they're not saying, I have this problem? Amy was not saying, I have this problem, can you help, right? She just was not sharing, wasn't really opening up and sharing very much about what she felt needed to be done or what wasn't good. So in her case, she seemed to believe that there wasn't really a problem, even though other people in her organization, her subordinates, they see a problem. And we all know that that happens, right? Sometimes it's the boss who's not quite seeing what's going on. Just ask my team, right? They'll often see things and be frustrated that I'm not seeing it. So what can you do to lead that conversation to where they're telling you, Amy in this case is telling you about the problem that she sees and seeking your help without resorting to asking 20 questions and angling and digging so that they finally share some kind of problem and you can pounce on that and say, aha, that's what I could help you with, because that obviously almost never will work and it certainly doesn't feel very good. It's not a very professional approach. Usually you'll get kicked out halfway through before anything comes to the surface, as you should be. Now, I call this the ToughNut Sales Conversation, and the tip sheet teaches you how to elegantly lead your sales conversation in that situation to where your potential client is happily telling you everything that you need to know in order to uncover a business opportunity there. Now, the key summary here from point number 1 is that for a sales conversation to go anywhere, they need to be telling you about a problem that they hope you can help them solve. What can you do if they're not sharing that with you? That's what I teach you how to do in the tip sheet. Point number 2, and of course, all the points that I'm sharing with you in this video, there, if you go back to the tip sheet, there is labeled point 1, point 2. You'll be able to see precisely where it's relevant. All right, point number 2, there are 3 keys to leading a tough nut sales conversation. Key number 1 is always know what I've been saying for years, sales is leadership. Sales is leadership, and when you can see the underlying structure of the sales conversation, then you can lead your prospect through it. Otherwise, you're just winging it, and winging it rarely ends the way you want it to, right? People want to follow someone who clearly knows what they're doing, who is confident, who is following some kind of path, and that includes in a sales conversation. Key point number 2 is remove pressure. Key number 2, remove pressure. You can lead, but your potential client there can also choose not to follow. So you need to remove anything that will cause him or her to not want to follow you. And key number 3 is get to the truth of the situation as your prospect sees it, okay? You need to meet your prospect where he or she is so that they feel, wow, you get me, you understand. That's key. Because if Amy doesn't believe there's a problem and you, because of things you heard from Bob and John, you kind of try to convince her that there's a problem, she's not going to follow you, and she shouldn't, because you might be right, but you don't understand her. She's going to feel, oh, you know, you don't really see my way. She's going to pull back, and there'll be that resistance, and it's going to end as, you know, I just don't think this is going anywhere. Have a good day. But what if you could lead Amy to talk about a problem that she does see? That's when opportunity opens up. Point number 3. What is the difference between the question that Daniel asked and the question that I suggested that he ask instead? Daniel asked, and I quote, "I know Bob and John recommended that we talk, but before we get started, I thought it would be good if you tell me why you agreed to have this conversation. That's a reasonable way to open up a conversation. It could go well." I suggested a bit of a difference. It's a small nuanced shift, and I want to point out why I think that small shift really matters. My way is to say instead, "Bob and John suggested that we talk, Amy, and just so I know where we are, what did they tell you? What did they tell you so that I know what expectations you're bringing to this conversation?" Now, what are the distinctions here, right? When you ask, why did you agree to have this conversation, it kind of opens up all sorts of things, and you have less control over where it's going to go. But when you say, what did they tell you, you're starting at the very beginning as it relates to you and Amy, why you're having this meeting. That way, Amy could share something there's no judgment involved. There's no, it's just the facts. What did Bob and John tell you so that I understand where, what the context is, what your expectations are. That's number one. So there's no pressure from you. She doesn't feel like she has to justify anything or explain anything. Just shares what they said. Now, in all likelihood, she will also add, "Bob and John told me this and that. I don't necessarily agree with that, but, figured let's meet. They felt strongly about it." Fair enough. Her response tells you if she's there for her own reasons, in this case, no, or if she's just there because someone else suggested she talk to you, which is the truth, and which is why she's there in this case. So in short, what we want to do here is you want to make it easy for her to start by telling you some simple facts without judgment, not getting into anything complicated, right? Because you're giving her an opportunity to share what she sees as the truth of the situation, by you leading in a way that gives her the chance to share something really simple and obvious, or not complicated. No judgment involved. She doesn't have to feel any pressure about that. Just, what did Bob and John tell you? And that makes it easy for her to share, to share openly. It also creates a precedent, because remember, what I said is the goal of the sales conversation is that your prospect is comfortable sharing what he or she sees as the truth of the situation. Point number four. Point number four is that once she tells you that Bob and John see a problem, but she doesn't see it as a problem, it's being solved, people are working on it, and as you saw in the tip sheet, are you at a stalemate? Is there any point in continuing? If yes, how? How can you possibly lead this forward? And the answer is, of course you can lead it forward, and this is where some real magic comes into play. Remember, the goal, I said it 3 times, I'll say it twice, I'll say it a 3rd time, that you want your prospect to be coming to you essentially saying, "I've got a problem, can you help solve it?" So I showed you that there are 3 aspects to this. Number 1, how you frame the conversation is how you're leading it, all right? B, remove pressure, so she doesn't feel like you're pushing her into to agreeing with a certain position. And C, solicit, kind of draw out, make it easy for her to share the truth as she sees it. So how are we doing all this in this final magical section of the scenario that I shared with you in the tip sheet? Well, first, you're leading by framing the conversation. And you say, "Amy, so I'm hearing that there is some disagreement amongst you and amongst the 3 of you as to what's possible here or what's desirable, etc." That's the beginning of what I share. And what I'm doing is I'm framing it about something in a way that there's no judgment. What I'm hearing from you, Amy, is that there is some disagreement between the 3 of you as to what's possible or what's desirable. She's going to hear that, not going to feel any pressure, right? So because it's not about who's right, I'm not taking a position. That's key, the second key, remove any pressure. It's just about the truth as she sees it, what she has shared with me. So she feels I understood her. I'm meeting her where she is. And that also, then key C, the 3rd key, is this makes it really easy for her to want to tell you more of the truth as she sees it. So then when you make a very reasonable observation that sometimes there are invisible connections, there are unlikely connections between what they're seeing and maybe what you're seeing. So why don't you spend a few minutes sharing some of the problems that you are seeing? If I see an opportunity, if I see where there might be, just from my perspective, where there may be or is a connection, a likely connection, I'll share that with you, and that really could solve something for you. And if not, then we'll all just call it an early day, and we'll go home, because you obviously won't have something that I can really help with. So let's get back to what we really need to do. So again, there's no pressure there, but what you've now done is you've led her to the point where she is comfortable sharing the problem as she really sees it. And that's when you have the chance to find out if there really is something that you can help in some kind of paid consulting type of way, or product or service, whatever it is that you sell. And this is really magical, because you've taken her from where she's a tough nut, closed up, not really sharing much, holding cards close to her chest, to where she is willing to share with you for her own reasons, right? Hey, well, I do have this problem, and I don't know if you can help, but I'll just tell you a little about it, and let's see where it goes. And that is just about the best thing that you could be looking for in a sales conversation. And you did all this without playing 20 questions, without having to, is it this, is it that, and that, and that, which nobody likes and never works. So in closing, I'll just say again, if you're an expert, if you're a consultant, if you lead a firm, and you're looking to create a consistent flow of ideal clients for yourself, go to dovgordon.net/force, F-O-R-C-E. Have a look at what's there and join us. And you can also email me, dovgordon@dovgordon.net, with any questions or comments or feedback. I'd love to know what you think about this. I hope you enjoyed it, and go study it, because putting another 5-10 minutes to review it will internalize the thinking. And if you have any follow-up questions, let me know as well.